Thank you very much, Lascian Corla. I so move. Lascian Corla, Minister, thanks very much for coming in to take this debate. I just wonder at the outset whether it's been indicated that the government are putting forward an amendment to this motion or not. No, well, I'm hoping it will be accepted, but I'll believe that if and when a vote isn't called. The current national driver licence, I suppose we start at the beginning. The people obtain their driving licence like they obtained their motor tax at their local authority offices up to 2013. In 2013, the local authorities, which were the issuing authorities for driving licences, were replaced with the sole issuing authority, that being the Road Safety Authority. And the Road Safety Authority, in their wisdom, decided that they were going to put out 3 contracts, tender for 3 contracts, one of which was the front office service, where people went in to give their information and hope that they would obtain. The other 2 contracts were for the printing, the back office, the going through the data, etc., and the third one was for the actual physically printing or making the driving licence. So that, at the time, the Road Safety Authority awarded the contract to Swiss service SGS to be the front office provider. One minister who sat around cabinet at the time had, I suppose, a certain crisis of conscience thereafter, but we're not aware that he had any at the time when he subsequently announced that, that was a contract that should have been given to him post. But it wasn't. It was given to this Swiss company who set up 33 offices, I think it was at the time. They very recently announced a 34th. The difficulty is now, of course, Minister, information that you confirmed to me in the Dáil at the very end of the week before last, when I brought to your attention the difficulties in obtaining appointments at the Ennis office. You confirmed that the walk-in service, which had previously been discontinued during COVID, based on health and safety advice and to avoid people, to ensure that there's as little contact as possible between people, that when a new contract was being awarded in 2021, that walk-in service was completely discontinued. And I suppose I'd have worries about that on a variety of levels. One is that it would appear to me, and I don't think it's unfair to suggest that COVID was kind of used as a cover for the downgrading of a public service. But the other is the lack of a walk-in service per se, because then people are still able to go to an NDLS office, of which there are now 34 in the country, although some of them, I think including some in your own constituency, Minister, operate on a part-time basis. But they have to make an appointment in advance. To make an appointment, you have to either go online or ring a number. Now, I previously highlighted to you the difficulties that my constituent St Clair had in booking that 10-minute slot. One woman in her 80s was 90 minutes on the phone. My office was 45 minutes on the phone. Now, I thought this might be unique to Ennis, but since I raised this issue with you, it has come to my attention that this is a widespread problem right across the country. So we've gone in the space of less than 10 years from anybody being able to walk into their local authority office and get their driving licence to people not even being able to book an appointment in a public service. So what ought to be a public service is no longer public, because it's being provided by a Swiss logistics company, SGS, and it's no longer really a service, because if you can't book your appointment, or if you have to spend, I don't think it's unfair to say that if you have to spend almost an hour or in excess of an hour on the telephone trying to book a 10-minute appointment, it is inadequate. And I know that the Minister is agreeing with me on at least that much this morning. So I suppose the other thing is then, of course, you can renew your licence online completely, but to do that you need a public services card. Now, Minister, you'll be aware you were in you will be aware that during the previous Dáil's term of office, the Data Protection Commissioner carried out an investigation into the lawful or the legality of the public services card, and in particular using it as a basis or requiring it to provide services other than social welfare services, and found out that there was no lawful basis for that. There was a big brouhaha about it. The government took a case against the Data Protection Commissioner, which was subsequently compromised or settled as between the parties. But to the best of my knowledge, Minister, unless you're able to point me otherwise, that Data Protection Commissioner finding that it is unlawful to request a public services card for anything other than social welfare services stands. And regardless of your view on whether it stands or it doesn't stand, I'd ask you to point to me somewhere in legislation which says that in order to renew your driving licence, you need to have a public services card. Because there's nowhere public services card mentioned anywhere in the Road Traffic Acts, and they're essentially what govern the granting of this driving licences. So why are we making it so difficult to just renew your driving licence? That's essentially what I would like to know. And why are we moving state services in this direction, which is essentially to trim them, to privatise them, and to make them less accessible to the citizens that we are supposed to be serving? And those are my concern. When the contract was being renewed in 2021 on Post. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I think it probably slipped under the radar with a lot of people because of what was going on at the time. But An Post again sought the tender. Now, An Post has several hundred offices right across the country. 950 post offices. Now, I accept maybe that they might not be able to provide a driving licence renewal service in all of them, but I expect they could provide it in a lot of them. Yet they were passed over again for this Swiss logistics company, which has 34 offices. So, we're talking about saving on Post. We're talking about moving as many services into An Post as possible. We're criticising the banks for taking services off our main streets and the difficulties that entails for sections of our population who A, aren't very good on computers, or live in an area where there isn't a very good broadband service, or simply want to have a service provided to their face. And yet we seem to be doing exactly the same thing. And the last thing that I wish to bring to your attention, Minister, is one that I brought to your attention before, that they're now refusing, at least in Ennis, and I don't know whether this is nationwide or not, but they're refusing to accept cash. Now, is there any lawful basis for that? I mean, what I can accept if it was a temporary measure during COVID-19 not to accept cash, but why on earth can they not accept cash now? And what is the huge problem with? I mean, there are a limited number of offices. They're in places. They can go and lodge the cash at the end of the day. I mean, the one in Ennis is in a shopping centre. We're not talking about huge amounts of cash that they'd become a target or anything like that. So really, Minister, I think that we're seeing a complete downgrading of the service, and it does concern me. And as I think I have a minute left, there's one other thing that irks me about driving licences, and that's the countries from which you can have your driving licence recognised. And it's countries that you might expect: Australia, Isle of Man, Jersey, South Africa, New Zealand, the UK and Northern Ireland, of course, and some states of Canada, leaving out Quebec, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. But what concerns me slightly more is the 50 states of the United States. I mean, we have a lot of interaction with the United States. We have a lot of people moving over and back. And it's not in the motion, and I accept that, but if you could explain the rationale in your summing up at the end, why we don't recognise driving licences from the United States. And to countries where we don't recognise driving licences, in the UK, if they recognise driving licences from some countries and not from others, and if they don't recognise it, well, then you have to do your practical test, you have to do your theory test before you get a licence. That's all quite rational. But in Ireland, on top of that, even if you've been driving for 10 years, 20 years in another country, and you come to Ireland, if your driving licence isn't recognised, you have to do all the lessons. Now, that's a racket. If you've been driving for 20 years and you've had a licence in another country, you should be able to sit the test, and then you either pass the test or you fail the test. But the idea that you have to do all of the lessons, even if you've been driving for as I say, most of your adult life in another jurisdiction, to me, makes very little sense, and I would like to know what the rationale for that is. But this motion is, I'd urge you, Minister, to accept this motion because of the diminution of services in the driving licences renewal area.